I call on the member for Indi.
If some members on the government side had their way, I wouldn't be standing here speaking, because on this very critical issue that goes to the protection of our borders, the ability of a national government to exercise its sovereign responsibilities, we've been told that you can't speak on these issues, even though it's been a burning sore for this government since the very day they dismantled the policies that worked. But this is the Australian Parliament. This is not about delaying a vote. This is about putting on the record some comments about a fundamental failure of the Labor Party as a party and of the Labor Party as the government. We've heard so much about the playing of politics, and the very beginning of the Labor Party's criticism of the Howard government's approach was playing politics. It was playing the politics of the elite. So we were criticised in government because we implemented successfully policies that not only stopped the boats, there were only 4 irregular boat entrants in detention when we lost office, but because in this great democracy that is Australia, we actually listened to what the Australian people wanted. And that is the fundamental problem with the Labor Party. They have been taken over by the fringe left that would be more comfortable in the Greens and sneer at the concerns and the values of mainstream Australia. And it's very interesting, this playing the politics of the elite, because who did they listen to back then? And I came across some typical comments, and these were made by Julian Burnside on June the 11th in 2002, where he said, "The Pacific solution was an immediate and astonishingly popular response to the Tampa case." And he went on to say, "The Howard government won the approval of an unthinking electorate with its response to Tampa, but it forever sacrificed any claim to moral decency." That is who the Labor Party has been playing to. They have contempt for the basic belief that the majority of Australians have, which is this: they want to believe that their national government is a sovereign government, has the ability and the power and the resources and, importantly, the desire to fulfil one of its basic constitutional responsibilities, which is to protect its borders. Whether it's illegal goods coming into the country or whether it is irregular entrants coming into this country, what is so offensive about that to the Labor Party? It is the stubbornness. It is the stubbornness to accept that perhaps, is it old-fashioned, is it? Just like our constitution? That old-fashioned notion that a sovereign government should be in a position to reflect the wishes and aspirations of the people it seeks to represent, and that means protecting our borders, which is why when John Howard made the statement that we will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances under which they come, there was a resonating head nod across the nation. And somehow that slogan was used against us as if it was somehow mean and terrible and nasty and immoral. What is immoral? What is immoral is when a government seeks to know better than the people of its nation, is when a government has the arrogance, panders to the views of the snooty elites instead of representing the silent majority. And we look at newspaper clippings of the time. Editorial in the Canberra Times: "Pacific solution, an indelible stain." Labor's quick action to end this offensive policy is to be applauded, though it will take time to rehabilitate Australia's damaged international reputation. Those responsible for the Pacific solution face an almost impossible task in erasing this blot on their record, and deservedly so. What absolute rubbish. We were the envy of so many countries in Europe. They looked to us for policy solutions in dealing with the irregular entrants that they were having. But we have a more recent editorial from the Canberra Times, a balanced view of asylum seeker policy. When will we hear the apologies from those who demonised a very responsible policy that was in our national interest? We won't hear it because they will choke on those words, but history will record that the Howard government had humane policies, had appropriate policies, had responsible policies, and reacted democratically to the concerns of the Australian people. So why have we had a backflip from this government? Have we had a backflip because they're concerned about the number of irregular boat entrants? No. The only reason the government, this Prime Minister, has backflipped is because it's a political problem. Finally, democracy has caught up with this government and they realise that it's doing them damage in the electorate. So they think, how can we get out of this? Well, let's outsource our policy making. Let's give it to someone else so we don't have to take responsibility to all those people who applauded us and cried and we said we were the moral crusaders for demonising Howard. Let's absolve ourselves of the responsibility of making a decision and outsource our policy. Well, I reckon if you outsource your basic responsibility of making fundamental policy in this country, you should also outsource your salary. So that is why, not out of any desire to stem the flow of illegal entrants or to destroy the product that criminal gangs have in smuggling people, it is pure, absolute pure politics. On this side of the House, we do believe that those of us elected, particularly when we sit on that side of the House, we have a solemn and moral duty to the people of this nation. We have a solemn and moral responsibility to make decisions in the national interest, to increase their lot in life, to improve their standard of living, to improve their opportunities, to protect them, to give them the sort of nation they want. And that fundamental responsibility necessarily demands that a national government can protect its borders. We've seen the exaggerated claims about how much Nauru would cost. We've seen all the comments. We've got the media releases from Ms Gillard when she was Shadow Minister for Population and Immigration. Pacific solution, an illusion, not an answer. Pacific solution, the farce continues. The Pacific solution unravels. Well, the Prime Minister and her government need to take responsibility for the cost, the blowout of $4.7 billion, the cost blowout that the reversal of John Howard's policies has caused. Prime Minister may well be over it, as she said, I'm over it. Well, of course she wants to sweep it under the carpet, get to the end of the year and pretend and say, look at all the problems I've fixed. Look, I've got a solution. We've got the carbon tax. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to save the world's emissions with the carbon tax. Look, I've saved the boat problem. She won't solve anything because this is only a partial solution and her heart's not really in it. And Australians know that her heart is not really in it. And you know what they're saying? You cross from one end of the country to the other. And they're echoing some of the Prime Minister's words. They're over her and they're over her government.